Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Today, I am joined by Charlie Hart, and that is Charlie Hart, who you might also know as Awesome Charlie, awesome with an AU, and that is something she will explain herself. Charlie is a professional speaker on all things neurodiversity and LGBTQIA plus inclusion, and she joined me today to talk about exactly that. Now, we went around the houses in terms of our conversation. So we have spoken, as you would expect, around neurodiversity and LGBTQIA plus inclusion. But we've also had a good chat about the importance of role models, things that managers and leaders can do to create inclusion within their workplace. And Charlie has shared multiple examples of her own lived experience when it comes to the way that she experiences the world and the interactions that she has, and the things that people have done and people can do going forwards to make life just that little bit more inclusive for everybody. So, you know the drill. Please sit back, relax, and get comfortable in whichever way works best for you. And please welcome Charlie Hart to the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. So tell me, is it one of those things that that kind of like it just came to you in a brainwave?
So what happened was when my son was 14, he got identified as being autistic. And I realized that I probably was as well. So undiagnosed
Mhm.
at that time, but in the process, I discovered that there are a lot of people on social media, particularly Twitter, who talk about their lived experience of being autistic adults under the hashtag actually autistic. So I thought I'll have a piece of this action and learn from lived experience rather from experts or parents of autistic kids or something. So
Nice.
Awesome Charlie is the screen name, I think they call them, that I came up with because obviously my name's Charlie and awesome. No, my kids at the time kept singing this song. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. I think it's
When
from
you're
the
part of a
Lego
team. Yeah.
Minecraft movie or something. But so I thought, well, I'll be awesome with an AU for autistic because there's many autism advocates online who put AU after their name. So it's short for autistic, but it's also the chemical symbol for gold. So the whole point of that is to say autism is part of who I am. I am autistic. And not only that, but I'm not ashamed of it. I'm loud and proud about it. And I thought, well, what a brilliant spin on this rather than thinking, oh, I've found out at the age of 42 that I have this neurodevelopmental condition that I've struggled with all my life without knowing why. Let's just join the actually autistic movement.
Love it. I love that. And I love that you were kind of just so inspired by like making the connection to something your kids were singing and you were like, "Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome." And it really is, but isn't it? Like when you first said about it, I thought, "What a stroke of genius." Like it is pretty cool. Um
yeah.
and it's so
And
so
my
then that just became like you say your scream name.
yeah, it started as a Twitter account, quite anonymous, in addition to my personal one. And then when I started writing and making content and doing presentations about autism inclusion at work, it then grew into a Facebook account as well. And it's now my own limited company. So about 2.5 years ago, I had this kind of brainwave. I thought, I've had enough. I've worked in HR for 20 years. Yeah, when we find something we're good at, we can really stick with it. But now I want to make my passionate side quest into my main mission. So Awesome Charlie became my limited company.
I love that. And I love that you've called it a passionate side quest as well, because I think that's so one of the things I notice about everybody who kind of works in our space. I don't know anybody who just went to school thinking, oh, I want to do some sort of inclusion-based work. I want to make sure that everybody feels welcome. Like it generally
Yeah,
comes to us as a result of a feeling of not being included or a feeling of being different. And
yeah,
and I guess some of us are passionate and driven in a sense of, well, we're going to do something about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it also came from 20 years of experience where I saw some things done right and some things that could have been better. So I was constantly thinking, what could have helped me to thrive in my role? What could have helped other people? And when the pandemic happened and many of my colleagues ended up working from home all the time and then dreading the return to the office due to the sensory and social minefield that it is, it really started to take off. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
my kids, my daughters are nearly 14 and nearly 17, and the elder one also has a social media name like mine. So she is called Z, that's her nickname, and she has ADHD. So it's awesome, Charlie and ADHD.
Love it. I love that you've got that kind of like double act piece of it as well, where
Yeah.
you've really done the play on it. That's so cool. I love it a lot. And does Z do kind of work as well supporting you, or is it more just
Yeah.
social
So
advocacy?
she's kind of just starting, but she she is a really keen writer and very much already a social justice warrior. So since the age of about 12, we've been doing pride marches, actually marching, and doing a lot of LGBT activism. And now that she knows that she's ADHD, she is joining the neurodiversity movement as well. So she's doing politics A level, which she thought would help with that, and comes to quite a lot of HR related networking events with me as well. And she's pretty
Nice.
shy
That, you know,
actually,
I
but
know
if you talk to her about something she's passionate about, then the info dumping all comes. So various people want to put her on stages, including Tommy at Proud HR.
excellent, excellent. And that's one of the things though, isn't it? Like it gives me my heart some joy to hear about younger people really embracing not only who they are, but how they want to be in the world and following that path. And that's cool. That's really, really bloody cool. I love that a lot.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I kind of like how you were talking there about you know, you yourself have learned your lessons through your career and kind of actually things that you wish had been different, and that's then what's driven you into doing the work that you do. So what kind of ways is it then that you work with, I'm going to guess, organizations to help them make
Yeah,
their spaces more inclusive? Like what are the types of things that people approach you saying like, oh, we've got a problem with, or we need help
yeah.
with? Like what are the things that come up?
So when I first resigned from my permanent HR analyst job, I really thought I'd be doing loads of consultancy. But as it happens, the speaking is really taking off. So I don't really do the consultancy unless someone particularly wanted it. What I do is I go in and do a talk. It's usually a lunch and learn, sometimes in person, sometimes online, and I share my lived experience, some key concepts, and usually 10 neuro inclusion top tips, which I bring to life with examples. But I usually share quick wins as well. Like, for instance, if you allow people to express their communication preferences in an email signature, this is something you can do straight away. It costs nothing and it benefits many different kinds of people.
Nice. And what would be an example then of if people listening or watching this now are kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like what would putting their communication preferences on their email look like?
Yeah. So this example came about because when I left my really long-term job, I got another job for a mental health charity and still as an HR analyst. And they gave me a phone, which to me, it made me contactable for people all over the country in all kinds of roles. And because I'm autistic and I have ADHD, I tend to work in hyper productive spurts and then I'll do little bitty things. But when I'm really engrossed in something, I'm in a flow state and I need to be left uninterrupted. And what was happening is I was getting a lot of phone calls. I didn't know who was phoning me, didn't know what it was about. I didn't know how much they knew about me and my job. and it was interrupting my flow states. So I talked to my manager about this, and she said, do you know, if it's not working for you, it's not a problem. We've all got Teams. Why don't you ask people to send you a Teams message instead? And then if they need a phone call, you can phone them back, or you can have a Teams video call. Even better for me. So I'm not great at picking up non-verbal communication cues, but if you take away the non-verbal ones as well as the verbal ones for a phone call, then it's even harder for me. So I put on my signature. I don't have a mobile phone. I gave it back. She said you can give it back if you don't want it. My preferred method of contact is an email or a Teams message if it's more urgent. And then we can set up a Teams video call. Probably wasn't quite that long, but anyway, it worked.
Yeah.
And she said, do you know what? That was such a good idea. I'm going to roll it out across the company. And she did. And that is really refreshing, because when it comes to inclusion, there are so many quick wins that you could implement, but they tend to need approving by various different people who don't always agree with them. And these things just go around in circles and never actually get implemented. But that manager, she took my idea and she ran with it straight away.
I think that's so cool. Like several things in there. Firstly, the fact, and yeah, it'd be nice to talk about kind of the role that managers can play actually in enabling people, because that it was almost just a beautiful example, isn't it, of someone saying, well, if this doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
let's do something else, and just being experimental. And I really love the example of, you know, I work best if you send me an email or drop me a Teams message, and if we need to do something, we can do something from that. In the same way that there might be other people thinking, oh, if I get one more WhatsApp message, it's going to drive me around the bend.
Yeah.
But then they could very easily say, I check my emails twice a day. If you think something is super urgent, call me. Like if that's their
It's
preference, like pick up the
it's
phone
funny,
and
I
ring me.
recognize people we both know in both of those scenarios. But yeah, it's so helpful. But what was particularly great for me about that manager is that she could admit to the things that she struggled with. So because she wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, that meant that I felt safe to confide in her about the things that I struggled with. And sometimes it was a
Mm.
negotiation. So something that drives me up the wall about neurodiversity and autism inclusion speakers is they quite often position this like it's a legal requirement, and they come out with things about the Equality Act and make it sound like you have to disclose it as a disability and then tell your manager they have to give you adjustments. And to me, it isn't that at all. It's a human conversation, and managers and those who report to them need to have the kind of psychological safety where they can talk about things they find hard or their ideas and their perspectives, and trust that that information will be taken seriously, that they'll be accommodated where it's feasible, and that they won't suffer any detriment like mocking or discrimination or worse. So I was able to talk to that manager and say, when you just drop into a Teams video call with me unexpectedly, I find that really dysregulating and I really struggle with it. It's not just in terms of workload and interruption, but it's a bit of a sensory nightmare for me as well. And so she said, okay, I'll check with you in advance. But then I started to send her way too many text messages on Teams. And she said to me, can we meet in the middle here? Because actually, I've got uh, problems with my wrists and my shoulders. And if I spend a lot of time typing, it makes it a lot worse. So it's not that I don't respect your communication preferences, but we need a bit of give and take. And to me, that just reminded me of when you live with someone, say you're in a marriage and you need to compromise about things, and that's how everyone gets along. So it's not a legal negotiation at all. It's about respecting differing human needs and learning how to work together.
I really love the way that you've just said that and the positioning of it, and you said the words human conversation, and like that's it, right? Isn't it? It is two human people, or several human people just talking about their experiences and things that might work better,
Yeah,
and being unafraid to try it and see. Like
absolutely.
you said with your manager, like you tried something and then it swang in a way that she was like, oh, okay, I can't cope with this. But then,
Yeah,
like you say, she was vulnerable with you. She role modeled then saying something else, and it doesn't feel then as if like, oh, the thing I did didn't work or wasn't right. It's just, oh, we're going to keep going until we find the thing that works best.
absolutely. So she allowed herself to be vulnerable and share where her difficulties were. And way too many managers, especially if they get into more senior levels, kind of project this image of being good at most things, and particularly interpersonal and communication skills. And it's not always the case. I spent
Quite
so long
frequently not the
pretending I could
case.
do everything as well, where I'd actually go into a flustered, simmering meltdown just having to remember who wants what. If I was making a round of cups of tea and coffee, I've actually smashed an HR manager's mug when getting flustered about that, and then thought I don't know how to tell her. If we can admit
Oh,
about the things we
but
struggle with, it can really make working life so much more
yeah.
easy. And then we're able to thrive in our roles. We have better employee engagement, better attendance, we'll stay longer, and it improves everything. It's a complete win-win.
Yeah, 100. And just to reiterate the point that you made, developing the capability and the capacity to have those types of conversations as well. That's not just something that only happens at work. You then develop the capacity and the capability to have those conversations in all aspects of your life. And oh, what a world it would be if we were all better communicators, right? If we
Yes.
could all be more vulnerable, be more honest with the people that we spend our time with. Like, wouldn't that make a difference?
Absolutely. So you look at my second marriage, for instance, it was incredibly volatile for our first few years. And then we realized that I'm autistic with a side dish of ADHD, and he's ADHD with some autistic traits. And that meant that we were both prone to things like rejection sensitivity, emotional dysregulation, perfectionism. And so some of the rows that we were having could be mitigated by thinking, hang on a minute, am I being irrational here? Am I just completely in a volcanic mood for reasons that I need to calm down from before I continue this conversation? So it's saved our marriage, I
And
think, finding out about rejection sensitivity and emotional dysregulation.
I can 100% believe that there are so many things that I've learned just about people. I remember I had a partner, and we communicated really differently, and we found out that he had aphantasia, which is where
Oh,
he
yes.
can't see pictures, right? And I have hyperphantasia, so I
Yeah.
think exclusively in pictures.
It's
So
the same
even
with
just
me and
the way
Si.
we would describe things, yeah,
Yeah.
the way we describe things, we were just coming at each other, and like for people listening that can't see, I'm kind of waving my arms in
Yeah.
missing motions. But we just were not connecting. And as soon as we realized that, like I stopped rattling off endless lists of directions when we were driving somewhere, because I realized that he couldn't see the entire route in his head like I could. And he stopped expecting me to just be able to pluck information out of random places
Yeah.
the way that he could. I didn't understand his filing system, but he just knew stuff, and I couldn't figure out how he got there.
Yeah.
So, and it was
Totally.
just, yeah, it is a revelation, isn't it? Just learning things like that.
It is, and that's really random, that one. Who has the vivid mind's eye and who doesn't? It's not linked to anything like intellect. It's just kind of random. But what I've noticed
Yeah.
with autistic people is they tend to be one extreme or the other and not so much in the middle. So that the
Mm.
image with the apple and imagining it being cut in half, So I can do that in really vivid detail. I can see like brown spots on the skin, and I can see the pips and the husk that the pips are within, and the knife moving through it, and maybe even droplets of juice. And that's like hyperphantasia. But I didn't realize that Sai didn't have a mind's eye until we were looking to move house. So we were looking at these kind of normal houses that normal people live in that don't have a music room where a dining room would normally be. And I was saying to him, this one's perfect. Imagine we can have the PA system here and the drum kit there, and we could put our guitar stalls here, and yeah, we can. Don't worry about the dining table. We'll bung that in the conservatory. And he just couldn't see it because it's not how his mind works.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And it is fascinating. And it is all of those things, isn't it? It's just learning. Yeah, back to your point, it's human conversations, meeting other humans where they are in all of the amazingly diverse and I think, quite frankly, very interesting ways that our brains work and the way that we process stuff.
Yes.
Um, and making no assumptions that just because I experience the world in one way means it's the same for everybody else, which is so hard
Yeah.
to do, right? Like that's
It
really
won't be the same for
challenging.
anybody else. Yeah, that's the thing with neurodiversity. It's that concept conveys that every single human brain and mind is different. We each think, feel, and process uniquely. So there will be some commonality, particularly if it's someone with the same neurotype. But we're really hugely complex cocktails of ingredients. Some of them we're born with. So I was born autistic and ADHD, and some of them are added later, like my complex PTSD. So there's no way that other people are going to experience things like I do. So we need that respectful curiosity. And to quote Cynthia Fortledge, who I know we're both big fans of, you don't have to get it, you
Quote
don't have to
away.
relate. It's that acceptance without understanding piece.
Mm. And a lot of that comes from, doesn't it? When, like you were saying, when you went to your boss and you said, actually, this mobile phone, I am struggling with it. Um, they believed you, right? She
Yeah.
just said, okay, tell me about it. Let's talk about it. Rather than it's just a mobile phone, Charlie, get on with it. Just
Yeah.
pick it up. Like that would have been massively unhelpful for
Mm,
you. And it's just believing you when you say, I've got a challenge.
yeah.
Okay, let's
So
work
I
through
had a
it. And I think
similar
you love use.
in my previous job, my team leader there, because it was an HR shared service centre. So although I was the HR systems analyst, each of us in the team were expected to pick up the phone at times. And sometimes we would be supporting people who would rather have a phone call than a detailed email thread. So although I didn't like the phone, I had to use it. So that manager there, if she knew that an email thread had got out of hand and it needed a phone call, she would talk me through it. She'd help me plan the phone call, how I'm going to explain it. And then she'd be there next to me. So if I got stuck and lost for words or I was arguing myself into a corner or something, she would gently help me through it. So this is helping people with the things that they find difficult through patient and compassionate coaching rather than thinking that person is a pain in the arse because they won't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually what you've just highlighted there is also a really critical aspect of work, isn't it? That when we always think about jobs in terms of like job descriptions, like the work to be done is just this series of tasks, and then the assumption is people will just come along and do the tasks.
Mm,
And actually, we all, I mean, we just know everybody is different, and some aspects of those tasks will naturally be easy for some people and more difficult for others. And we don't stop, I think, enough when we're putting together like roles or thinking about interviewing people for jobs is exploring actually what are the outcomes that we need to achieve and what are the many different ways in which these tasks can be done and how
yes,
do we best support people in their achievement so that actually Charlie is fantastic when it comes to she can get through the email backlog faster than anybody we know. But we also know that if it's going to be a calls day, not to expect the same level of volume and processing. So, and
exactly.
the extra support. And it's kind of, and I would be the
Yeah.
opposite, I'm sure. But then my challenge is I'd be stuck on the phone just having a good natter with people for far too
Yeah.
long. So I'd have the opposite.
Yeah. Before I
But
knew I
and
was
we do, like, we
autistic,
as
I would
managers.
do that. It was never comfortable for me, but I knew that when you're in a systems role and you're dealing with clients within the business and you're dealing with a software vendor, that you're expected to form connections. And a lot of the advice around that is remembering the names of people's husbands and wives and where they've been on holiday and asking them about it and all that other neurotypical nonsense that I just don't do. But I masked furiously and tried to do everything that interpersonal skills coaches recommended I do, which is incredibly draining, and that would have affected my productivity and my
Mm.
self-esteem
I was
actually.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, like, what does the impact of that have on you? Because you're saying they're like,
Yeah,
okay, your energy and your self-esteem. So how does that manifest? Like, what does that
yeah.
look like for someone who's
It
masking to
it
that
actually
level?
made me feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with me, that I have to learn these social scripts in order to be successful in my role and in forming relationships. And if you look at me now with the knowledge that I'm autistic, I have such a network of friends and collaborators and so much support. And I do that without doing this performance of normal. So that's pretty
And I think that's the
validating
thing as
now.
well, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. The performance of like, and I love the term normal because like, what does that even mean, right?
Yeah.
It's just a weird sort of statement that we've made up, label that we
Yeah.
assign to what,
It's
you
so,
know?
I don't know if that's a rhetorical question because I'm not very good at working those out as well. Probably depends if this is an
Yeah,
answer. But are you familiar with
go with it.
Dr. Nick Walker? She was one of the
Oh,
pioneers of
no.
the neurodiversity movement. She wrote Neuroqueer Heresies. So she defines neurodivergent as having a mind which diverges significantly from the dominant societal ideas of normal. So that, to me, that defines normal as well, because it's saying that if you've got a mind that doesn't work differently from the dominant societal idea of normal, then you're neurodivergent. So normal is someone that just does what the dominant societal expectation is. So none of us within the Professional Speaking Association are likely to be that normal, are we? Because we get up on stage and share our
True.
ideas, and we're innovators and thought leaders and change makers. But I digress. But this
Yeah,
is the
and the
thing
idea
that,
of getting up in front of massive amounts of
yeah,
people, yeah, doesn't make us scared.
most many people would be horrified by that. And it I know you do a fair amount of work around anti-racism and anti-colonialism. So to me, when you look at just those words, dominant societal, it it kind of, the penny drops that this is actually a white supremacy thing. So like having to have neat looking hair at work is kind of a racist thing, because if you carry on thinking along that line, you might think, well, afro hair isn't professional. So it's all to do with taking the dominant societal person and saying that everything else isn't good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually to build on that, child, because I think that's a hugely pertinent point in that when we use the term dominant, we also don't necessarily mean majority. It's
No,
not it's not
it's
dominant
the
as in
power. Yeah,
yeah, more
it's
people fit that narrative.
yeah,
It's dominant as in a small proportion of people decided the way that society worked, and everybody has to fit into that. And some people are capable of fitting into that, and some people are not capable of fitting into that, or at least it takes, like you said, takes more energy to fit into that. But yeah,
mm,
dominant doesn't mean
yeah,
majority.
yeah. I kind of look at dominant societal norms through the lens of the power and privilege wheel, Sylvia Duckworth.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
people who have systemic power, they get to decide the dominant societal norms. I don't know if I'm getting too deep here, but the and the
No, no, crack on.
and I just need to acknowledge my privilege in that I am a white middle class woman with a roof over my head who doesn't live in a war torn country. My husband is not abusive, and I can afford to feed me and my kids and everything. I've got many privileges, but I'm also multiply marginalized. But where I find my power is in community. So although the autistic stereotype is doesn't get on with others, bit of a lone wolf, doesn't play well with others, I have a massive community and a lot of community power. And much of that has come to me through finding LGBT pride, because I'm bi, pan, and gender non-conforming, and the queer community. And much of it has come from finding neurodiversity and other people who are autistic and ADHD, or otherwise people who refuse to march to the societal norm.
Mm. And you've just started to allude there as well, because I know I've seen you. You mentioned already that you are a professional speaker, and I have seen you speak, and I've seen you speak about kind of the double rainbow, right? When you talk
Yes.
about the intersections of neurodiversity and LGBTQIA plus community. And I just want to expand because for people kind of listening and watching who maybe aren't familiar with some of the terms you just dropped there. So you talked about being bi, pan, gender non-conforming. Can
Yes.
you elaborate on that just so that people can follow?
Of course, yeah. So when I say I'm gender non-conforming, that means that although I'm not trans, that I was given a gender at birth and I was assigned female, but I didn't understand the assignment. So I've always been a tomboy. That's why I changed my name to Charlie when I was quite young. I've done it formally now as well. I identified strongly with George, who was a tomboy character in the famous five books, who just wanted to be like the boys and wanted everyone to call her George. And that's always been me. I've had what's traditionally viewed as more boyish hobbies like bird watching and taekwondo and karate, and I've never ever been one of the girls. And actually, if someone asks me on a girls' night out, it fills me with horror. And so, although I have women friends, I don't feel like I'm one of them. And I'm bisexual, which means that I experience sexual attraction to people the same gender as me and another gender. I experience both homosexual and heterosexual attraction. So it works two ways. So that doesn't mean it's not like bisexual, like I'm attracted to girls or boys and not non-binary people. It's either people the same gender as me or a different gender. I'm pansexual because this means that it's not actually that important what gender the other person is. It's not their gender that I'm attracted to. So, like David in Schitt's Creek said, it's not the label, it's the wine. And I love that. So I'm all of those
Yeah,
things. It's quite long to say
yeah.
bisexual, pansexual, and gender non-conforming. You could just call me queer, but there are still some people within the LGBTQIA plus spectrum who still think of that as being a slur. So I have to go a little bit
Mm.
carefully with that one.
Yeah, and I really so firstly, actually, thank you for sharing that because I think it's important that when, when we kind of bring terms in, it's likely that most of our viewers and listeners will be familiar, but actually for those that aren't, it's always good to break it down so that people understand and get a bit more of an insight into why it's important. And thank you as well for referencing about the word queer, because again, like you, I'm also part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and I'm also perfectly happy to refer to myself and be referred to as queer. And I also acknowledge, certainly, especially for people, and we are of a similar age, where we went to school when Section 28 was in existence.
Yeah,
And so, therefore, having any form of education around what at the time would have just been homosexuality was illegal. The term queer was certainly used in a derogatory manner, and I know for people listening and generally in society, people feel the pain of that still. So an advisor, I guess I always throw out there is if you're not using the term about yourself or about people whom you know are part of the community who are comfortable with it, just don't use it.
absolutely.
Just be
Yeah.
careful with it, just in case. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this
So
is
thank you
so
for sharing.
nuanced. So my kids have known they're queer since they were pretty young, actually, just around the age that sex education was starting. and they didn't have those constraints, but just there's a generation gap between them and their teachers. So their teachers told them not to use the word queer. And Z came home up in arms about this because she identifies as queer. It's quite
Yeah,
important to
yeah,
keep
and
listening and moving with the times, I think.
yeah, absolutely. And I think something I found myself saying more and more often recently as well is um that because there has been a shift away, away from seeing it as a slur and kind of the reclamation of the word, and there is a whole generation of people that are very happy to be called queer. And I would also say clearly some that aren't as well, because not everybody
Yeah,
is the same. But also now will soon become a back then when it comes to thinking about the time, and it may well change again. So anybody
yeah,
that's listening to this thinking, awesome, queer going forward, got it. Yes, until such time as something shifts again,
yeah.
and we're using another word.
But the
And we don't
language
know what that word
evolves
might
all
be.
the time. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you look at Eddie Izzard, for instance, who identifies as transgender. I remember when I was a kid, they identified as transsexual, and and before that
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a transvestite, which
Yeah.
now has a completely different meaning, which implies it's just about what you wear and not about who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I would say actually as a social commentary probably gives us a really good outline of because I believe Eddie Izzard uses pronouns she and they, doesn't she?
She
So I'm going to go with the
she
she on
she
this.
uses
Um
any pronouns, I believe, but prefers she, her, and prefers to be called
yeah,
Susie.
that's it, Susie Izzard. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so in this context then, so and I think if you think about her journey, um back in the day when the language around it would have been simply around, we weren't talking about transgender we were talking
Mm.
about cross dressers and transvestites, and she would have been adopting the language that was available at the time that probably felt closest to her identity.
Yeah.
And as that evolves, her own identification with her own identity has also shifted to the
Yes.
point that she feels that actually, yes, living in society as a transgender woman is the thing that feels right and likely would have been right all along. But
Yeah.
we were not as a society in a position to be able to make that safe for her to just do that.
And with the language evolving comes more power as well.
Yeah,
So I think there's always been non-binary and trans people in, particularly in things like theatre and performing arts and the kind of circles that she was moving in, but they were just called something else like gender bender or something like that before.
yeah,
But something that has really made a lot of sense to me is neuroqueer. So again, this is from Dr. Nick Walker, who I mentioned earlier, and her book is called Neuroqueer Heresies, but queer to her isn't just about gender and sexual attraction. It's about mindset, and you can actually actively change how your brain works. You'll have heard of neuroplasticity, I'm sure, but neurodivergent isn't, it's not just about whether you have a neurodifference like autism or ADHD. You can change how your brain works through things like meditation and mindfulness, experimenting with psychotropic drugs and all sorts of things. So if you neuroqueer, and you can use that as a verb, then you're basically making new neural pathways that are deliberately subverting the dominant societal norms. And that sounds great to me. And it means I can describe myself as queer, and I'm talking about my brain as well as my LGBT status.
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the thing, isn't it, really? Because if we think about the etymology of the word queer, it really is essentially just about difference, isn't
Mm,
it? It's just, again, coming back to that term normal, it's kind of not of the norm. Um, and actually, again, when we think about that, I would imagine, based upon all of I was going to say the word plethora, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going with it.
oh,
I
only if
think,
you've got Chat GPT to write your script.
yeah, true. Um, maybe my brain has become Chat GPT through neuroplasticity, but there's just like this massive variation, isn't there, of our identity characteristics and the who we are, there's
Mm,
so vast that actually I would imagine there are more people that don't fit into the quote unquote normal
yeah.
than
Yeah.
do.
I don't
Um,
know any bog standard, normal, typical human being, do you?
I mean, there's a really fantastic book by Francesca Martinez called "What the Fuck is Normal,"
Yeah.
and I think for me it was brilliant because it's just like normal is just what we've normalized, and
My
that
my best
varies.
friend Lucy Hobbs, her micro keynote is about redefining, reimagining normal. And
Nice.
there's a Dr. Robert Chapman, they wrote a book, The Empire of Normality, which really dives into this stuff, and it's so fascinating. But yeah, I wasn't brought up with a frame of reference for normal. My parents both being undiagnosed and neurodivergent, and just pretty random compared with the sort of the mythical Joe or Josephine normal.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And that's a really good point, actually, really thinking about the role models that we have in life and in the workplace. And that's kind of almost been a theme that's been coming up time and time again, isn't it, really? And that you've got your parents as role models for, being, and you will look up to them. And like you say, you are ADHD and autistic from birth, and you will be
Yeah.
surrounded by people who are behaving in the way that they are behaving because that's who they are, and you will behave in the way that you are because that's who you are. And this is kind of why having role models in all spaces and places of different types of people is so important, because otherwise we find ourselves trying to emulate people that are not like us,
Mm.
and that's tough.
I did that a lot when I was young, and it's almost like I completely forgot who I even was. Especially if it was someone I was attracted to, I'd model myself to be whatever I thought they were
Mm,
looking for. So
yeah,
it's a lot of layers to peel back when you begin that journey of finding your authentic self and being that person.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's why we need to have visibility of different people doing things differently, so that it I'm going to go back to normalizes um being just simply being
Normalize
human.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and just normalize human, like, and and you've already given examples of managers that you've had that have been good managers because they have role modeled vulnerability, they've role modeled curiosity, they've role modeled the attitudes that help people around them succeed. And I
Yeah.
would also add that you yourself, it seems to me just in this conversation, are clearly role modeling that for your children too, in that they are embracing who they are and how they want to be and the kind of life they want to create for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
It's
and
too
that's why
late
it's
for my
important.
eldest, unfortunately. So this is why it's all the more important that this world is a better place where my daughters can live in it and be relatively happy, because expecting to be happy all the time is a bit of a trap. But I want the world to be somewhere where they can flourish as their queer and autistic selves. We really need to, as a society, be embracing and celebrating difference rather than shoving people into these little boxes marked normal.
100%. I fully agree with that. I also just want to pick up on something there that you said, and I want to offer context, but it's also okay for you to say no if you don't want to
Yeah.
go there. But you mentioned about it being too late for your eldest.
Yeah. So, do you do trigger warnings here? Yeah,
We can
probably.
we can give it a trigger warning,
Yeah.
and I'll pop it in on the show notes. Yep.
So tragically, my firstborn child, Iggy, uh, we lost him to suicide at the age of 15, and he had been tormented by bullies for being weird and different.
Mhm.
Like me, he was autistic, and he was also quite effeminate, and he was also gay. So kids at school made his life a bit of a living hell.
Mhm.
And it's made me and my daughters even more determined to be who we are, loud and proud. and not let the bastards get us down.
Yeah. Yeah. And so firstly, thank you for sharing that. And obviously, it's an awful thing to hear that has happened, especially to a child. And these fundamentally, this is the ramification, isn't it, of not again leaning into the kind of the acceptance piece, not allowing people to be themselves, and of treating people awfully just
Yeah.
because they are different. And
We need kids to be brought up to celebrate difference rather than seeing it as a vulnerability.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
we coined the hashtag different is okay because uh, I know not everyone can see this because it's a podcast, isn't it? But I'm just holding up a painted rock that has an inside out rainbow on it. And it says, RIP Iggy, different is okay. And this, I make these rocks in his memory and as a legacy. So they're all either neurodivergent affirming or LGBT affirming. So they might have rainbow infinity symbols and or slogans that tell people that different is okay. And I leave them around for people to find. And this rainbow is inside out quite by accident. And Z, when she saw it, said, "No, don't repaint it. It's okay. It's different." But Iggy was different, and different
Yeah,
is okay. So
yeah.
that's where my hashtag different is okay came from.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so symbolic, isn't it? So symbolic and beautiful. I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and I hope, and thank you as well for the trigger warning. And I hope people listening and watching this will kind of take from that the really the importance of this is why this work matters, because we
Mm,
ultimately, our workplaces are an extension of our societies, which are the environments that our children are going to find themselves in
yeah,
always. So why do we not want to do everything within our power to make them places where they can be themselves and they can thrive? Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
If
yeah,
we can help people to thrive as themselves without this draining performance of normal, it's really in everyone's interest. It's good for employee engagement and retention and everything. And it's the right thing to do. There's a moral imperative here. It's not just about staying out of tribunals. And what's more, it's what Gen Z and beyond, the workforce of the future, are going to expect.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are just so many. There is a multitude of reasons as to why not investing, not just in terms of financially, but investing time and energy and resource and attention
Mm,
to having these conversations matters so much. I'm conscious we are coming up upon the hour. So what I would like to ask of you is that you have so fantastically shared so much about your lived experience and kind of who you are and why you do the work that you do. And you gave us the quick win about the communications email, which is awesome. Is there another top tip or something that you can share that from people listening to this, they thought, "Do you know what? I'd like to do something." What is one thing that
yes.
people can take away?
So this is a universal design principle, which means making things as accessible as possible for as many people as possible while detrimenting nobody. If you're going to be interviewing someone for a job, whether they're a external candidate or they're going for promotion or whatever, give them the questions in advance. It will help them if they have memory issues due to autism or ADHD or any other reason, menopause, grief. It will help them if English isn't their first language. Uh, It will help them if they're older. We are expected to prepare for job interviews. How the heck are we supposed to prepare if we don't know what people are going to ask us? So I might be comfortable to be here winging it and having this conversation, but many, many people need to know what they're going to be asked so they can prepare. So send out your questions in advance, everyone.
I love that, and you're so correct about it being the universal design. Like everybody can benefit from that, and also there will also be a certain type of person who, and they'll be the type of person that doesn't read emails in advance and doesn't do stuff, and they will also be the type of person that will excel winging it in a job
Yeah,
interview. and they will also be okay. You
Yeah,
can send it and they can not read it, and that's
which is
fine too.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just when you're in
Nobody,
an interview, you shouldn't be under pressure to trawl your memory for examples because it doesn't help you answer the question. So it's just nonsense.
yeah, love it, love it. So that's a fantastic, fantastic example. Thank you so much. So, Charlie Hart, is there anything that you came to say that you haven't had the opportunity to say?
Um, I think I could probably fill another couple of hours with this conversation and the
Me too.
tangents that I can go down, but I just want to say thank you very much for having me. And it's great we've got into some of the quite meaty philosophical conversations as well. And keep being different and weird and awesome because this is how we get to be ourselves and get to bring our beauteous human diversity to this world that we live in. And thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much. And what I have forgotten to ask you as well is if people want to connect with you, because I can imagine there will be people listening thinking lunch and learn. Yes, please, let's get
Yes.
Charlie in. And I will fully back and advocate that you do that because again, I've seen Charlie deliver her sessions. It's good stuff. So
Oh,
please do
thanks.
book her. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can email charlie@awesomecharlie.co.uk. That's awesome Charlie with an AU for autistic. Or my phone number's on my website if you want to WhatsApp me. I prefer not to receive unsolicited phone calls, but if you send me a message, I might phone you back if you prefer phone calls. And everywhere, all over social media, you'll find me as Awesome Charlie with an AU for autistic.
Fantastic. And I will put links to Charlie's website on the show notes as well. So that's probably a good place to go, as well as social media. Definitely do follow the content and get a book to your lunch and learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie Hart, it has been an absolute delight to have you on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.